One word to describe the Regents.
A mess.
Frankenstein.
Stressful.
Inequitable.
If you grew up in New York City, chances are you have heard of the Regents. The Regents are standardized exams that students across the state of New York have to pass in order to graduate and earn a diploma that's recognized by the State Board of Regents. The Regents were first administered to New York high school students way back in 1876 with the goal of measuring academic performance. Today, there are Regents tests for 10 core subjects, including U.S. history and government, English language arts, and chemistry. Students take the Regents in 8th grade through senior year. New York high school students must pass 5 of them in order to graduate. Personally, when I take these exams, I can't help but feel like I'm being pitted against every other student in the state. It's like a high-stakes competition that makes me feel insecure about my abilities. And I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. New York is one of only 8 states that mandate high school exit exams. As so many other states are turning to alternative forms of assessing academic proficiency, why does New York still use this standardized test as a graduation requirement? How should graduation readiness be evaluated? I'm Denise Marino, and I'm a senior at Leadership and Public Service High School. You're listening to the Miss Education Podcast Season 7, Questioning the Status Quo. This is Examining the Regents. Though Regents exams have been in place since the 1870s, they actually might be changing soon. According to Chalkbeat New York, a special commission is currently re-examining the state's graduation requirements and will be presenting their recommendations to the Board of Regents as early as this November. In the meantime, I thought I'd chat with students, educators, and policymakers to get their take on the Regents exams.
Not only is the Regents harder because of the subjects, but also because after COVID, learning hasn't been the same.
Jesus is a senior at my school. He is good at math, but he feels that the pandemic had a negative impact on his academics.
I feel like everyone might feel the same as me, that they're not as prepared.
Well, maybe not everyone. Meet Kaylin, a fellow senior at Leadership.
Personally, I would like to try because I'd like to see if if I've grown at any point as a writer, or if I would like to see if, where I'm at again, because it's been a while since we've taken a test like that.
Lisbeth, another senior, recently took the English language arts Regents. She loves to read and express her opinion on things that matter to her, but she struggled with the tests.
When I finished, there was only 30 minutes left. I wish we could have a little bit of spare time to look back at the test for at least an hour to make sure everything's okay.
In 2020 through the fall of 2021, the state paused using the Regents as a graduation requirement due to COVID-19. Now, back to in-person learning. Many students don't feel as prepared for the Regents. As I report this story, one thing is clear: people have different opinions. Some educators think that the Regents are very important because they help measure a student's academic performance. Here is Miss Mente, an earth science teacher at my high school.
I think it's good because of the fact that it actually has a good amount of challenge questions. At the same time, it also has a good amount of multiple choice questions that allows students to critically think about the topics that were taught to them.
Although the intention is to challenge students to think critically, does it really do that? Do these tests really evaluate a student's skills and knowledge?
I think, obviously, it's my opinion, I think that a lot of teachers feel that teaching to the exam is not optimal.
That's my school principal, Philip Santos. He has been a principal at Leadership for 12 years now.
It's not the best way to go about education. I think that teachers feel constrained by what they have to teach in a specific class. They have to cover certain topics in order for students to be prepared for the Regents exam. And I think that can take away from the joy of learning.
As a student, I can confirm that the exam can take that joy away. There are a lot of topics that we skip in class to prepare for the Regents. One aspect of the Regents that adults may overlook is the way in which they contribute to testing anxiety. Dr. Joseph Weiss is a clinical psychologist and anxiety specialist based out of Seattle.
I think anxiety manifests itself in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're all related to that feeling in the body. And I think the underlying mechanism is called avoidance. So trying to get away from the feeling. So you get nervous in the middle of the test. The way to handle the nervousness is by having some techniques that will enable you to calm down. They should be given help on how to handle the anxiety.
I had a really heartfelt conversation with a friend who is always on top of her work. She's always asking for help and participating in class. Her name is Isabella. She's a junior at my school.
I have testing anxiety, so it makes it harder to complete tests, not only the Regents, just testing in general. I just wish that they would, number one, give us as much time as we needed, regardless if we have any kind of special documents.
Isabella is just one of the many students who would identify in feeling this way about the Regents. According to a 2015 report issued by the New York State School Boards Association and the New York Association of School Psychologists, about 3/4 of school psychologists in New York say their students experience greater anxiety over state tests than for local assessments. Without getting in the weeds about how many of these students are experiencing clinical anxiety or more commonplace nerves, one thing's for sure. The Regents reflect if a student is a good test taker, but that is not always the appropriate way to measure knowledge. Instead of standardized testing, a small group of schools in New York City is leading the way with an alternative method of assessing graduation readiness. I spoke to Regents Board member Shino Tanikawa about these schools.
There's a group of schools in New York City called consortium schools, and they are exempt from administering Regents exams, except for the English Regents exam, because that's a federal mandate. They do project-based learning, right? So their whole curriculum is based on really teaching students holistically without ever having to teach to the tests, which is a beautiful thing.
There are 38 of these consortium schools in New York City. Instead of the regular New York State required graduation assessments, students complete what are called performance-based assessments. Rather than cramming for a test, students are evaluated on work that directly relates to what they have learned in class. As listed on the consortium website, some of these performance-based assessments include analytic essays on literature, social studies research papers, lab reports of original science experiments or engineering designs, and narratives of the process and solution of mathematical problem solving. In order to maintain rigor, these performance-based assessments are evaluated by an external grader who uses a standard consortium rubric. Their slogan reads, "A better way to assess student learning." Shoa Khan is a junior at Landmark High School, a consortium school. She is one of those students that are exempt from taking all but the English Regents test. So what does it feel like not having to take the Regents?
It's very relieving to know that I don't have to sit in a room for hours and take a test. But there are stressful aspects to what we do, but I would definitely say that taking the Regents is much more stressful than doing the presentations.
How do you think you would do if you had to take the Regents for every other class that you have to pass in order to graduate?
I'd be so sad. I would cry.
Instead of taking the Regents, Shoa wrote and presented a paper about the civil rights movement. Through her presentation, she was able to develop important life skills. Shoa and other consortium students are proof that there are other ways to demonstrate what you have learned throughout the school year. Consortium schools have shown to have positive results. Research from a study conducted for the Public Science Project at the CUNY Graduate Center in 2020 demonstrated that, quote, students in consortium schools begin high school more educationally and economically disadvantaged than their peers, and yet are more likely to graduate from high school, attend college, and persist in college than demographically similar peers. Seeing how other students have the opportunity of doing project-based learning, I also wish I had that because I'm not a really good test taker. Although I'm aware that my scores don't really reflect who I am or what my skills are, it's still a pressure that follows me. Shino, the Regents board member, praises this method because she believes it teaches more than the Regents.
I would love every student to be resourceful. I want students to be creative, and not just in the arts, but also creative in their thinking. Okay. Right? Because creative thinking is where the best solutions come from for any problems.
As the Board of Regents considers changing the state graduation requirements, it would be best if they did away with the Regents altogether. Instead, New York should consider adopting the consortium schools model, in which students have the option to choose how they would like to demonstrate their skills and knowledge gained throughout the school year. After all, we have been doing Regents exams for almost 150 years. Feels like time for a new approach. This episode was reported by me, Denise Marino, with production and editing support from Natalia Noves de Alcántara, Melanie Bonilla, Sabrina Duquesne, Mira Gordon, and Taylor McGraw. Music from Blue Dot Sessions. Special thanks to Erica Won and Good Studio, as well as Hindenburg Systems. The Miss Education Podcast is a program of the Bell. Our work is made possible in part by the Pinkerton Foundation, the Summerfield Foundation, and FJC. You can learn more about our work and find all episodes at bellvoices.org. If you are listening on a podcast app like Apple or Spotify, please drop us a quick rating and review. And don't forget to follow at Miss Education Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for listening.